we're jumping into one of the most, debated passages in the entire Hebrew Bible. It's a text that's puzzled scholars and inspired millions for, well, millennia. So let's just get right into it.
So, you've got this ancient prophecy, right? And at its heart is this really cryptic, suffering figure. People have been wrestling with this for centuries. But what if I told you the key to unlocking the whole thing wasn't some new, earth-shattering discovery, but something that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time?
Okay, so we're zooming in on Isaiah, specifically chapters 52 through 54. And we're going to be talking about its main character, the figure known as the suffering servant. Now, this passage it's absolutely famous for its beautiful, kind of haunting poetry. But it's also famous for the really intense debates it sparked, and I mean for thousands of years. Just listen to how the text describes this person. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. The language here is so personal, so somber. It just immediately makes you ask the big question, right? Who is this he? Well, to even begin to answer that, we've got to step back. I mean, way back. The thinking here is that to really get this prophecy, you can't just look at it in isolation. You have to look at the foundation it was built on. And that foundation? It's the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And this is really the crucial point of the whole thing. The key to understanding Isaiah isn't some revolutionary new idea that the prophet just dreamed up. Nope, it's actually a really old pattern, you could even call it a blueprint, that was laid out centuries before in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. And here's that blueprint, laid out perfectly. The Torah basically sets up this really clear 4-step cycle for the nation of Israel. It goes like this. Step 1, you obey, you get blessings. Simple. Step 2, you disobey, and that leads to exile and suffering. Okay? Then step 3, that suffering leads to repentance, to turning back to God. And finally, step 4, that return leads to a full-on national restoration and vindication. This is the story, the pattern that just repeats over and over again.
Okay, so now that we have that 4-step blueprint firmly in our minds, let's go back to Isaiah. Let's see how its poetry isn't just beautiful, but how it masterfully echoes this exact same structure.
Just look at this. It's a direct comparison. On the left, you've got the Torah, right? Deuteronomy warns that if the nation disobeys, they'll become a mockery and a reproach. Now, check out Isaiah on the right. The servant is despised and rejected. We held him in low esteem. It's pretty much the exact same language of national shame. It's almost identical.
And check this out. It works for the flip side too, the good part of the cycle. Deuteronomy promises that God will restore your fortunes and gather you again. Now compare that with Isaiah's call for Zion, which is a poetic name for the nation, to awake, awake, shake off your dust, rise up. You see? It's the same exact theme. National shame, followed by this incredible national renewal. And this quote from Isaiah 54, man, it just drives the point all the way home. For a brief moment I abandoned you, but with great compassion I will gather you. This is so important. It shows the suffering is not a final rejection. It's a painful, yeah, but temporary phase of the covenant relationship. It's exactly what the Torah's blueprint laid out. Okay, so this brings us right back to the central question, right? The one that's fueled centuries of debate. If the story is about the nation and its cycle of suffering and restoration, then who exactly is this mysterious servant figure? Well, the answer we're exploring here is actually really clear and direct, and it's an answer that the book of Isaiah gives us itself. The servant is a poetic personification of the entire nation of Israel. And look, this isn't just someone's interpretation pulled out of thin air. The author of Isaiah says it directly, multiple times. Earlier in the book, you see God saying, "But you, Israel, my servant." And again, "Listen, Jacob, my servant, Israel." And then, just to make sure you got it, a third time, "You are my servant, Israel." The text is literally defining its own terms for us. But you might be thinking, hold on, how can one single figure represent the suffering of a whole nation? It's a good question, and it gets back to this really core principle in the Torah, the idea of collective consequence. The idea is that national actions, like breaking the covenant, lead to national consequences. And what that means is that even the righteous people in the nation can and often do suffer right alongside the guilty. They're all part of that collective whole. What's really fascinating is that Isaiah even describes how all of this would look to outsiders. He says the other nations, seeing Israel in exile, they would completely misinterpret what was going on. They'd say, "We considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted."
They just see the suffering and assume, oh, God must have rejected them, which is exactly what Deuteronomy warned would happen. But then, right after that, Isaiah hits us with the real reason, the inside story, the covenant reality. The servant was punished for the transgression of my people. You see the difference? The suffering isn't because of some special sin of the servant figure itself. No, it's the consequence of the nation's collective failure to keep its end of the bargain.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together now. So what does this all mean? How should we read this super famous and, let's be honest, often misunderstood passage?
When you look at it through this lens, through the lens of the Torah's blueprint, well, Isaiah 53 suddenly doesn't look like some kind of theological revolution. It's something else. It's a powerful, poetic reaffirmation of the foundational covenant story, that cycle of suffering, repentance, and restoration that really is the story of Israel. And in the end, Isaiah himself brings it all full circle. He roots his entire message right back in God's everlasting covenant. He concludes with this promise: my kindness shall not depart from you, nor shall my covenant of peace be removed. See? It all comes back to that original blueprint we started with. So, looking at Isaiah this way really leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, how many other ideas that we think of as totally new or revolutionary are actually just ancient stories, beautifully retold for a new generation?